The trident remembered everything. It remembered the blood of dragons, spilled centuries ago when Rhaegar Targaryen fell beneath Robert Baratheon's warhammer. It remembered the crossing of armies, the prayers of desperate men, the final gasps of drowning boys weighed down by steel. The river kept its secret in the cold embrace of its current, patient as stone, older than the kingdoms of men. 3 days after the Red Wedding, it surrendered one more. The body drifted face down among the reeds, pale as milk in the failing light. Her gown, what remained of it, had once been gray silk, fine enough for a great lady. Now it clung to swollen flesh, torn and muddied, decorated with river weeds like some mockery of a maiden's garland. Her auburn hair spread around her head in the water, moving with the current like living flame, though the woman herself had gone cold as the stones beneath. Her hands were the worst of it. The fingers were shredded to bone in places, the nails torn away. They floated near the surface, still curved like claws, frozen in the desperate motion of tearing at her own face. Long furrows marked her cheeks, where she had raked herself in her final madness, down to the rope burns at her throat. The rope had cut deep, deep enough that her head lolled at an unnatural angle, the wound gaping like a second mouth, lipless and obscene. Lem Lemoncloak saw her first. 7 hells, he breathed, and the other brothers turned to look. They had been following the river for 2 days, searching for survivors of the slaughter at the Twins. They had found only corpses. Northmen mostly, still wearing the gray and white of House Stark, their bellies opened by Frey steel. Some had been in the water so long the fish had been at them. Others bore signs of violation before death, sport for the Frey soldiers, entertainment for a wedding feast that had turned to butchery. But this one was different. "Mother have mercy," whispered Ongi the archer. "That's quiet." Thoros of Myr moved closer to the water's edge, his usual drunken swagger gone. His robes hung heavy with road dust, and his face was gray beneath his beard. He had not touched wine since word of the Red Wedding reached them. "Get her out," gently. They waded into the shallows, 4 men moving with reluctant reverence. The body was heavier than it looked, waterlogged and stiff. When they lifted her from the trident's embrace, water poured from her mouth and nose, rushing out in a torrent that stank of rot and river mud. Her eyes were open, milky white, staring at nothing. Lem turned away and retched. "It's her," said Harwin, his voice hollow. He had been one of her father's men once, when Hoster Tully still drew breath and Riverrun stood unconquered. "Lady Catelyn. I'd know her anywhere, even like this." 3 days in the water, Ange said quietly. "Maybe 4. Gods be good. What did they do to her?" "What they did to all of them." Thoros knelt beside the body, his hands hovering over her ruined throat. The phrase broke guest right. They murdered a king under his own grandfather's roof at his uncle's wedding feast. They slaughtered his men while they were drunk on Frey wine and full of Frey bread. His voice was thick with disgust. They made the stones themselves cry out for vengeance. "Then the stones will have it." The voice came from behind them, ragged as a wound. Beric Dondarrion stood at the edge of the clearing, and the sight of him made strong men flinch. The Lightning Lord, they called him, the man who would not die. But each death had taken something from him, scraped away pieces until only the essential parts remained. His face was a map of old violence. The socket where his eye had been, the rope scar around his neck, the hollow of his cheek where a knife had laid it open. He moved like a man in a dream, or like a man who had been in too many dreams and could no longer tell which was real. "My lord," Thoros began, "she's been dead for I know how long." Beric's remaining eye fixed on the corpse. "I can feel it. The Lord of Light has shown me." He moved closer, his boots squelching in the mud. "How many times have you brought me back, Thoros?" The Red Priest's face twisted. 6 times. 7, if we count. 7 times I've died. 7 times you spoke the words and gave me back to this world. Beric knelt beside Catelyn's body, his movements stiff, as though his joints pained him. Perhaps they did. The resurrected were not meant to linger. Each time, I come back less. Each time, something stays in the darkness. Memories, feelings, the things that make a man. Beric, no. Thoris's voice cracked. You don't know what you're saying. You can't. I can give what was given to me. Beric reached out and touched the dead woman's hand, those ruined fingers that had clawed at her own face. A mother died here, a mother who watched her son murdered before her eyes, who felt the blade at her own throat and knew she had failed them all. Her children scattered, her husband slain, her house broken. That's what the Freys did. That's what Walder Frey's hospitality bought. His voice dropped to a whisper. The flames showed me. She has work yet to do. This is madness, Harwin said, but he made no move to stop it. None of them did. They had followed Beric Dondarrion through too much strangeness, had seen too many impossible things. The Brotherhood Without Banners had long since learned that the world was deeper and darker than the maesters taught. Thoros looked at his lord, his friend, the man he had resurrected again and again with prayers he had not truly believed in. If I do this, he said slowly, if I speak the words, you understand what it will cost? You have nothing left to give. This will be the end of you. I've been ending for a long time. A smile ghosted across Beric's ravaged face. Better to end for something that matters. She was a great lady once, a mother. Give her the chance to be a mother again, in whatever way remains to her. She's been dead for days, Beric, days. When I brought you back, it was always quick, minutes, sometimes hours, never this long. Gods only know what will come back if anything comes back at all. Then we'll know soon enough. Thoris closed his eyes. His hands trembled as he placed them on Catelyn's cold flesh, one on her ruined throat, one over her heart. The body was rigid beneath his touch, the skin slick and bloodless. It felt like touching meat, not flesh, like something that had never been alive at all. But he had felt that way about Beric too the first time, and the second, and the seventh. The words came in High Valyrian, the ancient tongue of the freehold. He had learned them as a boy in Myr, recited them by rote without faith or feeling. The way young acolytes learn the prayers of gods they do not believe in. The Red Temple had wanted him to be a priest. He had wanted to drink wine and watch the tournaments, to see the knights of Westeros break lances in the sun. But the Lord of Light had other plans. Maslarian Isa Sebantis, he chanted, and his voice grew stronger. Mir aus scoriot bantis Isa. Light is the shadow. Only you where shadow is. The words had never made sense to him, not truly. But he spoke them anyway, because they had worked before, because Beric believed, because something in this broken world still answered when he called. His hands grew warm, then hot, then burning. Fire licked up his arms, crimson and gold, but it did not consume. It never consumed. Not him, not anymore. He had spoken these words too many times, had channeled this strange power until it had marked him, changed him, made him into something other than a simple drunk from Myr. The flames danced across his fingers, played over Catelyn's corpse, like living things, seeking purchase in dead flesh. Beric gasped. The lightning lord's eye had rolled back in his head. Blood trickled from his nose, from the corner of his mouth. His remaining eye socket wept red tears. He swayed where he knelt, and for a moment Thoros thought he would fall, thought the ritual had failed, that his friend was dying for nothing, that the woman was too far gone, too damaged, too... Catelyn Stark's eyes snapped open. They were blue, so blue. Blue as a northern lake in winter, blue as the sky above Winterfell, blue as the ice that creeps down from beyond the wall. But there was nothing human in them, nothing warm. They stared up at the darkening sky with an intensity that made Harwin stumble backward, made Ungi drop his bow. Her mouth opened. Her ruined throat worked. The sound that came out was not a scream. It was worse than a scream. It was the sound of air dragged through a severed windpipe, of vocal cords that had been cut and corrupted by days in the water. It was a rasping, rattling thing, more animal than human, and it went on until Thoros pulled his hands away and the fire died. She sat up. The movement was wrong, puppet-like. Her head lolled on her damaged neck, her hair hanging in wet ropes around her face. Her hands, those ruined, terrible hands, reached up to touch her throat, her face. The fingers probed the rope burns, the deep furrows her own nails had left, as though trying to understand what had been done to her. Then she looked at them. One by one, her gaze found each man: Thoros, Harwin, Angie, Lem. Others, standing further back, afraid to come closer. She studied them with those coal blue eyes, and something like recognition flickered there. Not knowledge of their names, perhaps, not the memory of who they were, but recognition of what they were. Living men. Men who still drew breath while her son lay cold in the ground. Lady Catelyn? Harwin's voice shook. My lady, it's me, Harwin. I served your father. I rode with you and Sir Roderick when you went south. Do you remember? Her mouth worked. Her throat spasmed. When the sound came, it was barely a whisper, harsh as grinding stones. Dead, she said. All dead. Beric. Thoros turned to his lord, his friend. But Beric Dondarrion was no longer kneeling. He had collapsed onto his side in the mud, his remaining eye closed, his chest still. The fire had gone out of him. All the fires, the ones that had kept him walking and talking and laughing even after death. Whatever spark the Lord of Light had kindled in him, he had passed it on. No, Thoros said, but it was a weak thing, a word without conviction. He had known this would happen. Beric had known. They had all known. The Lightning Lord was dead, truly dead, finally dead. And in his place something else had come back to the world. Catelyn, no, not Catelyn, not anymore, rose to her feet with jerky, unnatural movements. Her wet gown clung to her, heavy with river water and rot. She should not have been able to stand. She should have collapsed, weak and disoriented, the way Beric always had after resurrection. But she did not collapse. She stood swaying slightly, her hands still touching her ruined throat. Stark, she whispered. My boy. My... The words dissolved into that terrible rasping sound, and her hands clenched into fists. Frey. Seven save us, breathed Lem Lemoncloak. What have we done? Thoros had no answer. He knelt beside Beric's body. This man who had been his friend, his purpose, his penance. He had brought him back so many times, had watched him die and die and die again, each time losing a little more of himself until only the mission remained. The small folk had called him the Lightning Lord, the hero of the people, the knight who could not be killed. But he had been killed, and the woman standing before them had cost him his last life. She looked down at Beric's corpse. For a moment something flickered in her eyes, some ghost of the woman she had been, the one who had valued honor and duty and the lives of good men. But it passed quickly, swallowed by the cold fury that animated her. Where? She rasped. Where are they? The ones who... She could not finish. Her damaged throat would not allow it. But they understood. They all understood. The phrase? Harwin said carefully. My lady, they're... Not! The word came out like a knife, like a threat. Lady. She touched her throat again, her face twisting with rage and grief and something darker. Not anymore. Never. Again. The Brotherhood looked at each other. They had wanted vengeance for the Red Wedding, all of them. Had sworn oaths to make the Freys pay for their betrayal of guest right, for the slaughter of King Robb and his men. But looking at the thing that had been Catelyn Stark, they wondered if they had called up something worse than the crime that birthed it. Thoros stood slowly. His robes were soaked with mud and Beric's blood. We'll find them, he said quietly. The ones responsible. We'll make them answer for what they did. She turned those cold blue eyes on him. The darkness was deepening now, and somewhere in the woods a wolf howled. Or perhaps it was just the wind. All of them, she whispered. Everyone who ate his bread, everyone who raised a cup, everyone who stood silent. Her ruined hands clenched and unclenched. All of them will hang. And in that moment, As the last light faded from the sky and the trident whispered its old secrets to the stones, the Brotherhood Without Banners knew they no longer served a king or a cause. They served a ghost, a mother's ghost, hungry for vengeance. They served Lady Stoneheart. The Brotherhood's camp sprawled across a wooded hollow 2 leagues from the trident, hidden beneath ancient oaks whose branches wove together like a roof. It was not a proper camp. No banners flew, no pavilion stood in ordered rows. These were outlaws, not soldiers, and they lived like foxes, always ready to run, always watching the shadows for enemies. But even foxes had dens. Thoros sat by the fire, staring into flames that gave him no comfort. The bottle in his hand was half empty, though he could not remember drinking from it. Around him, the brothers went about their evening tasks with unusual quiet. No songs tonight, no boasting of old battles or speculation about tomorrow's raid. The silence pressed down on them like a physical weight. She had not spoken in 3 days. The woman they had pulled from the river, the thing that had been Catelyn Stark, sat apart from the others, perched on a fallen log at the edge of the firelight. She had not moved in hours, had not eaten the food they offered, had not drunk the water. She simply sat, her hands resting on her knees, her blue eyes fixed on something none of them could see. The rope scar at her throat was livid in the firelight, a ragged purple line that cut so deep it seemed impossible she could draw breath. But she did breathe, shallow, rasping breaths that whistled through her damaged windpipe. The sound of it had kept half the men awake the previous night. "She needs water," Harwin said quietly, settling down beside Thoros. The older man's face was haggard. He had known Lady Catelyn when she was still the Lady of Winterfell, when she smiled and spoke kindly to her father's soldiers. "She hasn't drunk anything since it happened. She's not thirsty." Thoros took another pull from the bottle. The wine was sour, but it dulled the edges of what he had done. "She's not anything. Not hungry, not tired, not afraid. Whatever came back from the stranger's halls, it left most of her behind. That's Lady Catelyn Stark, Lord Eddard's widow, the mother of King Robb. That was Lady Catelyn Stark." Thoros's voice was harsh. "What sits over there wearing her face? I don't know what that is." They both looked at her. In the shifting firelight she seemed almost normal, a woman in a torn gown, mourning her losses. But then she turned her head, and the wrongness of her became apparent. The movement was too slow, too deliberate. Her eyes did not blink. Her chest rose and fell with mechanical regularity, as though she breathed only because the body remembered how, not because it needed to. "Beric would want us to help her," Harwin said. "Beric is dead because of her." The words came out more bitter than Thoros intended. He had not meant to say them aloud, but the wine had loosened his tongue. He gave everything for her. His last life, his last chance. And for what? So we could resurrect a corpse that doesn't eat or sleep or speak? She spoke, that first night. She said dead and Frey. 2 words in 3 days. Gods, Harwin. I've seen Beric come back from worse wounds than hers. And he was always still Beric. He remembered who he was, what he fought for. He was diminished, yes, each time, more diminished. But he was still a man, still capable of mercy, of laughter, of doubt. Thoros gestured toward the silent figure. "That thing has no doubts, only rage. Then we teach her mercy again. You can't teach what isn't there to learn." A branch snapped in the darkness beyond the camp's perimeter. Every man reached for a weapon, but it was only Jack Belucky returning from his watch. His scarred face sheened with sweat despite the cool evening. "Movement to the north," he reported, his voice low. 3 riders, maybe 4. Couldn't see their colors in the dark, but they're heading toward the King's Road. Freys? Lem Lemoncloak had appeared beside them, his hand on his sword hilt. Could be. Could be anyone. Half the Riverlands is crawling with soldiers, and none of them are friendly. We should move the camp. This from Ongi, the archer, who had positioned himself where he could watch both the tree line and the woman on the log. If they find us, let them find us. The voice was barely human. It scraped out of a ruined throat like stone on stone, each word an effort, each syllable thick with phlegm and decay. But it carried across the camp with absolute clarity. She stood. The movement was smoother than before, as though she was learning how her body worked again. She stepped into the fuller light of the fire, and men flinched from her. Not from fear of violence, though there was that too, but from the simple wrongness of her presence. She was a corpse, walking, dead flesh animated by purposes none of them fully understood. "My lady," Harwin began. But she raised one ruined hand, and he fell silent. Her fingers were still shredded, the nails gone, but scabs had begun to form over the worst of it. The flesh was gray and mottled, like meat that had been left too long in the sun. When she flexed her hand, the knuckles cracked audibly. "Not, lady," she rasped. Each word seemed to pain her, but she forced them out anyway. "That woman died at the Twins with her son." "Your Lady Catelyn Stark," Harwin insisted, as though saying it enough times would make it true. "You're the daughter of Hoster Tully, Lord of Riverrun. You're dead." She took a step closer, and Harwin involuntarily backed away. 3 days. In the water. Fish at my eyes. Crabs. In my mouth. Her hand went to her throat, fingers tracing the rope scar. "They killed my boy. While I watched. Killed him and laughed." The camp had gone utterly silent. Every man was watching now, drawn by the horrible fascination of her words. "The phrase will answer for it," Thoros said carefully. "We've sworn oaths." Oaths. The word was a sneer, as close to contempt as her damaged voice could manage. "What good are oaths?" Walder Frey swore guessed right, swore by the old gods, and the new, swore on his honor, as a lord. She laughed, and the sound was worse than her speaking voice. A wet, bubbling thing that should not have come from a human throat. "Honor, guessed right, oaths, all of it lies, all of it broken." "Not all oaths are broken," Harwin said quietly. "The Brotherhood still fights for the small folk, for justice." Justice. She turned to those cold blue eyes on him. "There is no justice. Not for my Rob, not for my girls, not for—" Her voice failed, dissolving into that terrible rasping. She stood there, mouth working, fury and grief warring across what remained of her face. "You have daughters," Thoros said, seizing on this thread of humanity. "Sansa and Arya. They may still live. If we could find them—" "Sansa." The name came out like a curse. "In King's Landing. Married to that little monster. A Lannister." Her hands clenched into fists. "Arya? Gone. Lost. Or dead. All dead. Everyone I loved." "Then let us help you find them. Let us—" "No." The word was flat, final. "First, the Freys. All of them. Every man who ate my Rob's bread. Every one who drank his wine." She took another step forward, and now even Thoros felt the urge to retreat. "You found me. You brought me back. Now you'll help me. Hang them. Every last one." It was not a request. Lem Lemoncloak cleared his throat. "My lady, begging your pardon, but there are hundreds of—" "Freys. Thousands if you count their men-at-arms and sworn swords. We're 50 men, maybe 60 if we count the— Then we'll hang, 50 at a time." She moved her toward the fire, into the full light, and men scattered before her like crows before a hawk. "Bring me a Frey, any Frey. Let me show you what I am." "There are no Freys here," Angai said nervously. "We haven't seen any since—" A scream split the night. It came from the northern edge of camp, where Jack Be Lucky had reported seeing riders. The sound was high and terrified, abruptly cut off. Then another scream, and the clash of steel on steel. "Arms!" Thoros shouted, but the Brotherhood was already moving, grabbing swords and spears and bows. "Form up! Watch the—" "Wait!" The woman, Stoneheart, for that was what she was now, not Catelyn, raised her hand. She tilted her head, listening. Her eyes had gone distant, as though she heard things the rest of them could not. They're running. 3 men on horses. Coming this way. How do you... But she was already moving, walking toward the source of the screams with measured, unhurried steps. The Brotherhood followed, weapons drawn, expecting an ambush. But there was no ambush. There were only bodies. 2 men lay dead in the grass, their throats open from ear to ear. Their horses stood nearby, rolling their eyes in terror. The 3rd man was still alive, barely. He knelt in the dirt, hands pressed to his stomach where his guts were trying to escape. Blood poured between his fingers. Standing over him was a boy of perhaps 15, with a knife in his hand and murder in his eyes. Gendry, Thoros said, recognizing the bull, one of their youngest members, a smith's apprentice with the black hair and blue eyes of Storm's End. What happened? They were Freys, sir. Gendry's voice shook, but his hand was steady on the knife. I heard them talking, bragging about the Red Wedding, about how they'd gutted the young wolf and all his Northmen, about how... He swallowed hard. About how they'd put a wolf's head on the king's body, sewed it on, called it mockery. The kneeling man looked up, his face pale with shock and blood loss. Please, he wheezed. I'm just a soldier. I was following orders. I never... Stoneheart knelt before him. The movement was so sudden, so fluid, that the man flinched back, but there was nowhere to go. She reached out with one ruined hand and grabbed his chin, forcing him to look at her, to see the rope scar at her throat, the claw marks on her cheeks, the eyes that held no mercy. You were there, she rasped, at the twins. You ate the wedding feast. You drank the wine. I'm just a soldier, he repeated, but his voice had gone thin with terror. Please, my lady, I have a wife, I have children. So did I. Her grip tightened. I had a son, a king. I watched them kill him. Watched them. Put a wolf's head on his body. Her other hand went to her throat, to the scar. They cut my throat while I begged, while I screamed. She leaned closer, and her voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried to every man present. Did you laugh? No, I swear I never... Did you smile? Did you cheer? Did you drink to his death? The man was weeping now, openly. I'm sorry. Gods, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I didn't... Hang him! The words fell like stones, flat, emotionless, final. My lady, Harwin began, he's wounded. He's... Hang him! She released the man's chin and stood, wiping her hand on her ruined gown. From that tree, let him dangle. Let the crows have his eyes. He's dying already, Thoros protested. He's gutted. He'll be dead in minutes. There's no need to... She turned on him, and for the first time since her resurrection, real emotion showed in her face. Fury. Pure, cold fury that made her eyes blaze with something beyond human rage. No need? Each word was a struggle, forced through a throat that would never heal. My son is dead. My girls are gone. My husband murdered. My home burned. And you say there's no need? She took a step toward him, and Thoros, who had faced knights and sellswords and worse, found himself backing away. I need to see them hang. All of them. I need to watch them die the way they watched my Rob die. This isn't justice, Thoros said quietly. This is vengeance. Good. The fury drained from her face, leaving only the terrible emptiness. There is no justice. Not anymore. Only vengeance. Only payment. Blood for blood. Beric wouldn't want this. He gave his life for you, and he'd want... Beric is dead. She said it without inflection, without regret. He chose to die. For me. Now I choose. For all of you. She looked around the circle of men, meeting each pair of eyes in turn. You can follow me and have your vengeance. Or you can leave. and let the phrase win. Silence stretched across the camp. The wounded Frey had stopped whimpering. He lay in the grass now, eyes glassy, breath shallow, dying, as Thoros had said, dead in minutes. But she wanted him to hang. It was Lemoncloak who moved first. The big man stepped forward, his yellow cloak bright in the firelight, and grabbed the dying soldier by his arms. "Help me," he said gruffly to Ungi. "We'll need rope." "Lem, you can't—" Harwin started. "He was at the twins." Lem's voice was hard. "He ate their bread and drank their wine while they murdered our king. He's earned a rope." One by one, the others joined in. Not all of them. Some stood back, faces troubled, clearly uneasy with what they were doing. But enough. More than enough. They strung him up from an old oak, using the rope they'd taken from a Lannister supply wagon a fortnight past. The man was barely conscious by then, his guts hanging out, his life leaking away into the grass. When they hauled him up, his legs kicked twice, then went still. Stoneheart watched it all with those cold blue eyes. She did not smile, did not show satisfaction or pleasure. She simply watched, as one might watch the sunset or the rain fall. Something inevitable, something necessary. When it was done, when the corpse swung gently in the night breeze, she turned and walked back toward the fire. The Brotherhood followed, subdued, some of them casting glances back at the hanging man. Thoros remained where he was, staring at what they had done, at what he had enabled by bringing her back. "The Lord of Light have mercy on us all," he whispered. But the flames gave no answer, and in the darkness beyond the camp, the wind carried the scent of blood and the soft creak of rope against wood. The Brotherhood Without Banners had a new leader, and she was teaching them what it meant to serve a ghost. The inn at the crossroads had burned 3 times during the war, once by Lannister men, once by Northmen chasing Lannister foragers, and once by bandits who cared for neither lion nor wolf. Each time someone had rebuilt it. The stone walls could not burn, and travelers needed shelter, so the inn endured. Scarred and smoke-stained, its sign hanging crooked but enduring. Masha Heddle had owned it once, until the Lannisters hanged her for the crime of housing Tyrion Lannister while Catelyn Stark held him prisoner. Now it belonged to no one and everyone, a place where men could buy a meal and a bed without asking too many questions, provided they had coin and kept their swords sheathed. Tonight, it housed 5 men wearing the twin towers of House Frey. The farmer who brought word to the Brotherhood was a bent old man with rheumy eyes and hands twisted by years behind a plow. He knelt in the mud before Stoneheart, his head bowed, and his voice shook when he spoke. "They came 2 days ago, milady, said they were hunting outlaws, hunting you and yours. They ate Willow's chickens and drank her ale, and didn't pay for none of it." He swallowed hard. "Then they said they wanted sport. Took Willow's daughter. She's only 14, milady. They took her upstairs and—" "Enough." Stoneheart's voice cut through the darkness like a blade. She stood at the center of the hollow, firelight playing across her ruined face. "How many?" "5, milady, all of them wearing Frey colors, proud as you please, acting like they own the God's damned world." The farmer's voice hardened. "They do own it, don't they? After what they'd done, after the Red Wedding, they can do what they want now, and nobody can stop them. I can stop them." She turned to face the Brotherhood. 50 men, maybe less. Some had deserted after the first hanging, unwilling to follow what Beric Dondarrion had become. But those who remained had grown hard in the weeks since the Trident. They had learned to read the signs in Stoneheart's silences, to anticipate her orders before she gave them. "We ride tonight." "It's nearly midnight," Harwin protested. "The horses are tired, and tonight." She walked toward him, and he fell. Silent. Every hour we wait is another hour. They hurt that girl. Another hour. They laugh about the Red Wedding. 5 armed men in an inn, Thoros said quietly. "We could lose brothers in the taking of them." Stoneheart's hand went to her throat, to the rope scar that never faded. Then we lose brothers, but the phrase will hang. They rode through the darkness, following deer trails and old footpaths that avoided the King's Road. The moon was a sliver behind clouds, giving just enough light to see by. Stoneheart rode at the front, sitting her horse with the same unnatural stillness she brought to everything. She did not sway with the animal's gait, did not adjust her seat or check her reins. She simply sat, staring ahead, as though she could see through the darkness to her prey. The inn appeared as a dim glow through the trees, candlelight in the windows, smoke from the chimney. Peaceful, if you did not know what was happening inside. Angay, take the roof. Stoneheart's voice was barely a whisper, but it carried. She had learned to make her damaged throat work for her, to use its rasping quality to command. Lem, the back door. Harwin, with me. The rest. Surround the inn. No one escapes. They moved into position like ghosts. Whatever else could be said of the Brotherhood, they knew their craft. Outlaws learned to move quietly, or they did not remain outlaws for long. Within minutes, the inn was encircled. Stoneheart dismounted and walked to the front door. She did not draw a weapon, did not signal for the others to breach. She simply pushed the door open and walked inside. The common room was lit by a fire in the hearth and a handful of tallow candles that filled the air with greasy smoke. 3 men sat at a table, playing dice and drinking ale. They wore mail under their surcoats, and swords hung from their belts. The twin towers of House Frey were sewn prominently on their chests. One of them looked up as she entered. He was young, perhaps 20, with the weasel features common to Lord Walder's brood. Wine had flushed his cheeks, and he grinned when he saw her. Well, well, what have we here? He looked her up and down, taking in her torn gown, her matted hair, her bare feet. You're a bit old for my taste, but beggars can't be choosers, eh? Come here, woman. We've coined for... He stopped. His grin faltered as she stepped into the fuller light, and he saw her face. Saw the rope scar at her throat. Saw the claw marks on her cheeks. Saw the eyes that held no humanity, only cold purpose. 7 hells, he whispered. You're her. You're the dead woman. Stoneheart's lips pulled back from her teeth in something that might have been a smile. Yes, I am the dead woman. The one you killed at the Twins. The other 2 soldiers scrambled to their feet, hands going to their swords. But before they could draw, the Brotherhood poured through the doors, front and back, a dozen men with weapons ready. Drop your... Steal, Harwin commanded. Do it now, and you'll have a trial. A trial? The young Frey laughed, high and nervous. We're soldiers of House Frey. We don't answer to outlaws and ghosts. But his hand shook as he drew his sword. Where are the others? Stoneheart asked. What others? There's just us 3. 5 of you came to this inn. Where are the other 2? The Frey's eyes darted toward the stairs. They're busy, upstairs, with a girl who was glad enough for the attention, I'll tell you, practically begged for... He never finished the sentence. Stoneheart moved faster than she should have been able to move, faster than a woman 3 weeks dead had any right to move. She crossed the distance between them in 2 steps, her hand closing around the Frey's throat with terrible strength. His sword clattered to the floor as she lifted him onto his toes, squeezing, her ruined fingers pressing into his windpipe. Liar! She rasped. All Freys are liars! Please, he choked. I can't breathe. Neither could I. She held him there, watching his face turn red, then purple, watching his eyes bulge, watching the terror bloom as he realized he was going to die. Do you remember the Red Wedding? Do you remember how it felt to murder a king? I wasn't there. I swear, all Freys were there. She released him, and he fell to his knees, gasping. In their hearts, in their souls, all guilty, all condemned. The other 2 soldiers made a break for the back door, but Lem Lemoncloak and his men were waiting. There was a brief struggle, the ring of steel, a cry of pain, and then silence. When the Brotherhood dragged them back into the common room, both were wounded. One had a gash across his ribs that bled freely. The other's sword arm hung useless at his side. The two upstairs? Stoneheart asked. Gendry's getting them, Lem said grimly. The girl's alive. Hurt, but alive. Footsteps on the stairs. Gendry appeared, his face dark with fury, dragging two more Freys behind him. These were older men, their hair graying, their surcoats stained with wine, and worse, they reeked of sweat and fear. Found them in the girl's room, Gendry said. They were... He couldn't finish. We should kill them where they stand. No. Stoneheart moved to the center of the room, where all 5 prisoners could see her. They'll hang. All of them. But first, they'll talk. We're soldiers of House Frey, one of the older men said, trying for dignity. We have rights. Rights? Stoneheart's laugh was that terrible bubbling sound. What rights? Did my son have? What rights? Did his men have? When you butchered them? At dinner? That was Lord Walder's command. We were following orders. You can't hold us responsible for... All guilty. She looked at each of them in turn. You ate the bread, drank the wine, raised your cups, while the musicians played the reins of Castamere. Her hand went to her throat. You watched. You knew. You are all guilty. The young Frey who had spoken first, the one she had choked, found his voice again. You're mad. Gods, you're a mad, dead thing. And you think you can dispense justice? You're an abomination. Thoros struck him across the face with the back of his hand. Mind your tongue. You speak to Lady Catelyn Stark, daughter of Hoster Tully, widow of Eddard Stark, mother of... No, Stoneheart's voice stopped him. Not that woman. Not anymore. That woman died at the Twins. You killed her. She looked down at the young Frey, watching blood trickle from his split lip. I am what? You made me. I am your vengeance, your punishment. For what? One of the older Freys shouted. For following our lord? For doing our duty? The young wolf broke his vows. He swore to marry a Frey daughter, and he married some foreign whore instead. Silence. The word cracked like a whip. Stoneheart moved closer to the man, and he shrank back despite himself. My son was a king. He won every battle. He was loved by his men, respected by his enemies. He was 16 years old. Her voice dropped to a whisper. What were you at 16? Playing with toy swords? Hiding behind your father's walls? My son was a man, a king, and you helped murder him. It was war, the man said weakly. In war, men die. Not at weddings, Stoneheart straightened. Not under guest rite. Not while they eat. Your bread and drink. Your wine. She turned to Harwin. Rope. 5 lengths. Strong enough to hold their weight. My lady, Harwin said carefully. Shouldn't we question them first? Find out what they know about Frey movements. They know nothing worth knowing. Stoneheart walked to the hearth, staring into the flames. Thoros watched her, remembering how Beric used to do the same thing, searching the fire for visions, for guidance from the Lord of Light. But he saw nothing in her posture that suggested she sought divine wisdom. She simply stared, as though the flames reminded her of something, of warmth, perhaps, of life. They are soldiers, following orders, doing what soldiers do. She turned back to face the prisoners. But guilt is guilt, and the rope cares not for reasons. This is murder, one of the Freys said. This is justice. Stoneheart walked to the young Frey, the one who had propositioned her when she entered. She knelt before him, and her voice softened slightly, though it never became gentle. Do you have a mother? He blinked, confused by the question. Yes, I have a mother. Does she love you? Of course she. What does that have to... I loved my son. She reached out and touched his cheek, almost tenderly. I carried him, in my womb, nursed him, at my breast, taught him. His first words. I loved him, more than my own life. Her hand moved to his throat, fingers resting gently against his pulse. And you took him, from me. You and yours. Took everything. I wasn't even there. His voice rose in desperation. I told you I wasn't at the Red Wedding. I was... You wear their colors. You eat their bread. You rape their enemies. You are a Frey. Her fingers tightened slightly. That is enough. They hanged them from the rafters of the inn, using the same beams that had held smoked hams and drying herbs in better days. The innkeeper, a frightened woman who had cowered upstairs throughout the raid, watched from the doorway, her face pale. We'll leave coin for the damage, Harwin told her, and for the girl, for her, for what was done to her. The woman just nodded, her eyes fixed on the 5 bodies swaying slowly in the firelight. Stoneheart was the last to leave. She stood in the doorway looking back at her work. 5 corpses, their faces purple, their tongues protruding, their eyes bulging. Victims of the hangman's art. 143, she said softly. Thoros, mounting his horse, turned. What? Phrase. At the Red Wedding. 143 of them. I counted. She looked at him with those cold blue eyes. 5 tonight. 138 to go. You can't kill them all, Thoros said. There are too many. They're too powerful. Eventually, I'll hang them all. She pulled herself onto her horse with jerky, mechanical movements. Every last one, until House Frey is a memory, until mothers warn their children about what happens to oath breakers. They rode north, away from the crossroads, following the old river paths. Behind them, the inn stood silent in the darkness, its windows now dark, its hearth cold. 5 bodies hanging from the rafters. A message written in flesh and rope. The Brotherhood Without Banners had struck again. But men were beginning to whisper that it was no longer the Brotherhood that rode through the Riverlands at night. It was something else, something darker. They called her Lady Stoneheart now. The hooded woman who asked no questions, heard no pleas, showed no mercy. The dead woman who had returned to settle accounts. And the name spread like wildfire through the war-torn lands. In taverns and market squares, in castles and in hovels, men spoke of her in hushed tones. Some said she was a ghost. Others said she was a demon sent by the stranger to punish the wicked. A few, very few, remembered she had been a mother once, a wife, a lady of a great house. But those memories were fading, drowned beneath the weight of what she had become. In a village 3 leagues from the crossroads, a fisherman pulled his nets from the river and found them tangled with rope that had been used for hanging. He cut it free and threw it back into the water, making the sign against evil. The trident remembered everything. And now it had a new secret to keep, the secret of Lady Stoneheart, and the vengeance that would not sleep, until the rivers ran red with Frey blood. The sept at Maidenpool had been burned during Gregor Clegane's rampage through the Riverlands, its 7-pointed star pulled down and melted for the gold that gilded it. But the walls still stood, and the roof had been patched with thatch, so the small folk still gathered there to pray. They prayed for peace, for harvest, for the wars to end and the soldiers to go home. Their prayers went unanswered. The Brotherhood had taken shelter in the sept's undercroft, a damp stone chamber that smelled of mold and old incense. It was not comfortable, but it was hidden, and that was what mattered. The Freys had put a price on their heads, on Stoneheart's head especially. 500 gold dragons for the hooded woman, dead or alive, preferably dead. It was not enough. It would never be enough. Stoneheart sat apart from the others, as always, her back against the cold stone wall. She did not sleep, had not slept since her resurrection. The others had grown accustomed to finding her awake at all hours, staring at nothing, her hands resting on her knees, her breathing slow and mechanical. But tonight was different. Tonight, she held something in her hands, a letter. It had arrived with a sellsword from Saltpans, a scarred man with one eye who traded information for coin. The Brotherhood had paid him well, and he had ridden away quickly, glancing back over his shoulder as though afraid Stoneheart might change her mind about letting him live. The letter was addressed to no one, signed by no one, but the information it contained had traveled hundreds of leagues, passed from mouth to mouth, growing and changing like a living thing. News from the north, news from King's Landing, news from the twins, news of her children. Thoros found her like that, in the gray light before dawn, staring at the parchment as though she could burn through it with her eyes alone. He descended the narrow stairs carefully, his joints aching. He was getting old, too old for this life of cold camps and midnight raids. But the Lord of Light had given him a purpose, even if that purpose had grown twisted and dark. "You should rest," he said softly. "I'm dead." Her voice was flat. "The dead don't rest. Even the dead need—" He stopped himself. What was the point? She would not listen. She never listened, except when the subject was phrase and rope and vengeance. "The letter, what does it say?" For a long moment she did not answer. Then slowly she held it out to him. Thoros took it with careful hands. The parchment was cheap, the ink smudged, the handwriting barely legible, but he could make out the words well enough. King Robb dead. Winterfell burned. Bran and Rickon dead. Theon Greyjoy took the castle. Bolton's bastard took it from him. Sansa Stark in King's Landing, married to Tyrion Lannister. Arya Stark missing, believed dead. Jon Snow still at the wall, now Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. He read it twice, then looked at Stoneheart. Her face was expressionless, but something moved behind her eyes. Something that might have been pain, if she still had the capacity for it. "Jon Snow is alive," Thoros said carefully. "He's Lord Commander. That's good news, isn't it? One of your children still lives, still—" "Not my child." The words came out like poison. "Ned's bastard. A reminder of his betrayal, of his whore." Thoros winced. He had heard the stories. How Lady Catelyn had never accepted Jon Snow, never forgiven Lord Eddard for bringing his bastard home. It was one of the few flaws in an otherwise noble woman, this hatred of an innocent boy. "He's still your husband's blood, still a Stark. And he's Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. That's a great honor." "Honor?" She laughed to that terrible, bubbling laugh. "What good is honor? Ned was honorable. It got him beheaded. Robb was honorable. It got him murdered." Her hand clenched on the letter, crumpling it. "Honor is for fools, for dead men." "What of your daughters?" Thoros pressed, sensing an opening. "Sansa is alive. She's in King's Landing, yes, but she's alive. And Arya. The letter says she's missing, but not confirmed dead. There's hope. Hope." She repeated the word as though tasting something foul. "I hoped at the twins. Hoped Lord Walder would honor his oaths. Hoped my son would be safe under his roof." She looked down at her ruined hands. "Hope died with Robb. Only vengeance remains." "You're still a mother," Thoros insisted. "Whatever else you've become, you're still—" "Am I?" She turned to those cold blue eyes on him. What kind of mother abandons her daughters? What kind of mother seeks vengeance instead of searching for her children? The question hung in the damp air of the Undercroft. Thoros had no answer for it. What could he say? That she was right? That she had become a monster, fixated on revenge while her daughters suffered? Or that she was justified in her rage, that the phrase deserved everything she planned to do to them? Both were true. Neither was comforting. "Sansa is married to a Lannister," Stoneheart continued, her voice softer now, almost conversational. "Tyrion, the imp, the one I held captive, the one I foolishly released." A pause. "Is she safe? Does he hurt her? Or is she playing the game? Learning from Cersei and Littlefinger? How to survive in that pit of vipers?" "I don't know," Thoros admitted. Neither do I. She looked back at the letter. And Arya, my wild girl, my little wolf, where is she? Dead in some ditch? Sold to slavers? Starving in the woods? Her voice cracked, and for a moment, just a moment, she sounded like Catelyn Stark again, like a mother who had lost her children. I should be looking for her. I should be in King's Landing, finding Sansa. I should be. She trailed off. The moment passed. The cold mask settled back over her features. But I can't, she finished. Because I'm dead. Because I'm this thing. This hollow woman with a rope scar and rage. She crumpled the letter completely, crushing it in her fist. I can't save them. I can only kill the ones who destroyed them. Footsteps on the stairs. Harwin appeared, his face troubled. My lady, we have a problem. Stoneheart rose smoothly, all trace of emotion gone from her face. What problem? There's a woman in the sept. She came in an hour ago asking for sanctuary. Says she's fleeing from the twins. Harwin hesitated. She's a Frey, my lady. By marriage. She's... Bring her. My lady, she has information. About the twins. About Lord Walder's plans. If we could question her first, before... Bring. Her. Harwin sighed and retreated up the stairs. A moment later, he returned with a woman between Lemoncloak and Ongi. She was young, perhaps 20, and pretty in a fragile way, with auburn hair and frightened green eyes. She wore a traveling cloak over a fine gown, now stained with mud and road dust. Her hands were bound in front of her. She took one look at Stoneheart and fell to her knees. Please, she whispered. Please, I wasn't part of it. I swear by the Seven, I had nothing to do with the Red Wedding. I'm not really a Frey. I was married to one, but he's dead now, killed by his own brothers over some insult. I'm nobody. Please. Stoneheart walked slowly around her, studying her the way a crow studies carrion. Your name? Elena Westerling. I was married to Sir Peter Frey. He died 3 months ago. I've been trying to leave the twins ever since. But Lord Walder wouldn't allow it. He said I was property of House Frey now, that I'd stay until he found another use for me. She was crying now, quietly. I finally escaped 2 nights ago. I've been walking ever since. Westerling? Stoneheart stopped in front of her. Like Jane Westerling, the woman who stole my son. My cousin, Elena admitted, her voice shaking. But I swear I had nothing to do with what happened. I didn't even know about the plot until after. I was in the kitchens when it happened. I heard the screaming. I saw them bring out the bodies. She looked up at Stoneheart, her eyes pleading. I saw what they did to King Robb. I saw the wolf's head. I was sick for days after. Please, you have to believe me. I believe you saw it. Stoneheart knelt down, bringing her ruined face level with Elena's. But seeing is not enough. You were there. You lived in the twins. You ate their bread. You bore a Frey name. I didn't choose any of that. I was married off to pay my family's debts. I was 14 years old. I didn't... She choked on her words. Please, I can help you. I know the twins. I know their defenses, their schedules, where the guards patrol. I know which Freys were at the wedding and which weren't. I can help you find them all. The Undercroft went silent. Every man present understood what was being offered. A way into the twins. A way to strike at the heart of House Frey. Why? Stoneheart asked. Why help me? Why betray your husband's house? Because they're monsters. Elena's voice hardened. Because they broke every law of gods and men. Because they murdered a boy king and his mother and laughed about it afterward. Because I've lived with them for 6 years, and I know what they are. She met Stoneheart's eyes. And because if someone doesn't stop them, they'll keep doing it. They'll keep breaking oaths and murdering guests and getting away with it, because they're useful to the Lannisters. Stoneheart studied her for a long moment. Then she reached out and touched Elena's cheek, her ruined fingers gentle against the young woman's skin. "Tell me," she rasped. "Tell me about the wedding. Tell me everything you saw." And Elena did. She spoke for an hour, maybe more, describing the feast in terrible detail, how the musicians had played the Rains of Castamere, how the doors had been barred, how the crossbows had appeared in the gallery. She described Lord Walder's laughter, the way he had taunted Queen Jane. She described Robb's death, the arrows, the blades, the crown tumbling from his head. She described Catelyn Stark's last moments, how she had seized Jingle Bell, Walder Frey's simple-minded grandson, how she had held a knife to his throat and begged for her son's life, how she had sawed through the boy's neck when her pleas were ignored, how she had clawed at her own face, laughing and weeping, until Raymond Frey had cut her throat. "You died screaming," Elena whispered. "You died calling for your children. They threw your body in the river. Lord Walder said, he said no one would find you. He said you'd rot at the bottom of the Trident. And good riddance to Stark bitches?" The Undercroft was utterly silent. Even the rats in the walls seemed to have stopped moving. Stoneheart's hand had not moved from Elena's cheek. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible. "And after? What happened? After they murdered us?" "They celebrated," Elena said bitterly. "They finished the feast. They drank and sang and joked about it. Some of them went to the Stark men's tents and killed the wounded. Others raped the camp followers, the serving girls. They were drunk on victory and wine and blood." She closed her eyes. "The next day they sewed the wolf's head onto King Robb's body and paraded it around the castle. Lord Walder thought it was the cleverest thing he'd ever done. And my son's wife, Jane Westerling, prisoner. They keep her in the water tower, under guard. Her mother visits her sometimes. I don't know if there was a child. If there was, they're being very quiet about it. Why? Because a child would be the rightful king in the north. Because the northern lords might rally around a baby, even a baby in a cradle. Because Tywin Lannister wants the north pacified, not inspired." Elena opened her eyes. "They're waiting to see. If she's pregnant, they'll probably make it disappear. And the Freys? Who lives in the Twins now? Lord Walder, of course. He barely leaves his chambers anymore. He's over 90, and his mind wanders, but he still controls everything. His sons are there. The important ones, anyway. Sir Ryman, who leads the siege of Riverrun. Lothar, who helped plan the Red Wedding. Bastard Walder, who they say cut Queen Jane's brother down. The women, too. His wives, his daughters, his granddaughters. There must be 50 Freys living in those towers. 50. Stoneheart released Elena and stood. Not enough. There were 143 at the wedding. Where are the others? Scattered. Some at Riverrun with Sir Raymond. Some in King's Landing, serving the crown. Some at their own holdings. Seaguard, Harrenhal, the other keeps they've been given as rewards for their treachery. Elena struggled to her feet, but they come home, eventually, for weddings, for funerals, for Lord Walder's name day celebrations. They always come home to the Twins. Then we wait. Stoneheart turned to her men. We watch. We learn their movements, and when they gather, under one roof, she did not need to finish the sentence. Every man present understood. "My lady," Thora said carefully, "the Twins are heavily defended. 2 castles, one on each side of the Green Fork, connected by a bridge. Thick walls, deep moat, hundreds of men-at-arms. We're 50 outlaws. We can't. We will." Her certainty was absolute, "because I will walk through their gates, and they will let me in." "How?" Harwin demanded. "They know you're hunting them. They have your description. The moment you show your face." "I won't show my face." She touched to the rope scar at her throat. "I'll wear a hood. I'll be just another widow, just another broken woman, seeking justice." A pause. "And when I'm inside, when they're all gathered, we'll bar the doors." Understanding dawned on their faces. Horror and admiration mixed in equal measure. The red wedding, Lem breathed. You want to give them their own red wedding. Not a wedding. Stoneheart's lips pulled back in that terrible smile. A funeral for House Frey. For everyone who broke guest right. For everyone who laughed while my son died. She looked at Elena. You will help us. You will tell us everything. Their habits, their defenses, their secrets. And when the time comes, you will walk through those gates beside me. I will, Elena said, and there was steel in her voice now. I'll help you burn them all. Thoros turned away, his stomach churning. This was madness. This was vengeance taken so far beyond justice that the two could no longer see each other. But what choice did he have? The Brotherhood had made their choice when they followed Stoneheart from the Trident. They had made their choice with every hanging, every ambush, every night spent hunting Freys through the darkness. They were damned, all of them. But perhaps the Freys deserved to be damned too. Outside, in the sept above, the first light of dawn was filtering through the broken windows. The small folk would arrive soon to pray, to ask the Seven for mercy, for peace, for an end to the endless war. But in the undercroft below, a different kind of prayer was being answered. The prayer of a dead woman who would not rest until she had drowned the Riverlands in blood. The prayer of Lady Stoneheart. The rain came down in sheets, turning the road to mud and the world to gray. It was the kind of rain that soaked through wool and leather, that filled boots and drowned fires, that made men curse the gods and wonder why they had ever left their hearths. But the Brotherhood had long since stopped complaining about the weather. They had learned to endure worse than rain. Stoneheart sat motionless on her horse, letting the water stream down her face, over the hood that she now wore always. It pooled in the hollow of her throat where the rope had cut, ran down her ruined gown in dark rivulets. She looked like a drowned corpse, some men whispered, like something that should have stayed beneath the waters of the Trident. They were not wrong. There, Angi said quietly, pointing through the rain. The inn, just as the fisherman said. It was a poor place, half collapsed, its thatched roof sagging under the weight of water. But smoke rose from the chimney, and horses stood in the stable, good horses, too well fed for this part of the Riverlands. Someone with coin was sheltering there, someone they had been hunting for 3 weeks. How many? Stoneheart's voice cut through the sound of rain. 6 horses, Angi reported. Could be 6 men, could be fewer. Hard to say. And the bird? Saw it land an hour ago, gray with a mockingbird sigil on its leg, just like the others. Angi wiped rain from his face. He's in there. Has to be. Petter Baelish. Littlefinger. Master of Coin. Lord of Harrenhal. And, if the rumors were true, now Lord Protector of the Vale. The man who had loved Catelyn Stark with a boy's desperate passion. The man who had set in motion the chain of events that destroyed her family. The man Stoneheart wanted dead more than any Frey. It had taken weeks to track him. Littlefinger was clever. Too clever by half, as Ned used to say. He moved in secret, traveled with small escorts, used false names and disguises. He was a mockingbird in truth, flitting from shadow to shadow, never staying in one place long enough to be caught. But even mockingbirds had to land eventually. They had traced him through rumors and whispers, through bribes paid to innkeepers, and threats delivered to merchants. He had been in the Vale, attending to his duties as Lord Protector. Now he was riding south, back toward King's Landing, taking the long way through the Riverlands. A mistake, perhaps his first. Surrounded. Stoneheart commanded. No one leaves. No one. The Brotherhood moved into position with practiced ease. Lem and his men circled to the back. Harwin took the stables. Angi positioned himself where he could see the door, an arrow already knocked. Within minutes, the inn was encircled by men who had learned to kill quietly, efficiently, without mercy. Stoneheart dismounted and walked toward the door. She did not hurry, did not draw a weapon. She simply walked through the rain, her bare feet squelching in the mud. Her hood pulled low over her face. She pushed the door open. The common room was warm and dry, lit by a fire in the hearth and a few tallow candles. 3 men sat at a table near the fire, playing cards. They wore nondescript clothing. No livery, no badges, nothing to identify them. But their swords were good steel, and they wore them with the ease of professional soldiers. Bodyguards. They looked up as she entered, hands moving toward their weapons. But they hesitated when they saw her. Just a woman, bedraggled and alone, dripping water onto the floor. "Inn's full," one of them said curtly. "Move along." Stoneheart said nothing. She stepped into the fuller light, and the man's eyes widened as he took in her torn gown, her bare feet, the water streaming from her hood. "7 hells, woman, you're soaked through. Did you walk here from the river?" He half rose from his seat. "Look, we can't help you. We're here on business. There's another inn a few leagues." "Where is he?" The words stopped him cold. There was something in her voice, that rasping, broken quality, that raised the hair on the back of his neck. "Where is who?" he asked carefully. "Littlefinger." She pulled back her hood. The men recoiled. One of them made a sign against evil. They had heard the stories, all of them. Every soldier in the Riverlands had heard about the hooded woman who hanged Freys, about Lady Stoneheart, the ghost of the Red Wedding. "Gods preserve us," one whispered. The stairs at the back of the common room creaked. A man descended, thin, narrow-faced, with a pointed beard and clever gray-green eyes. He wore fine clothes, though they were travel-stained, and his hand rested on a dagger at his belt. When he saw Stoneheart, he stopped halfway down the stairs. "Lady Catelyn," he said softly. "Or should I say, Lady Stoneheart? I've heard so much about you." "Petter." She spoke his name like a curse. "Lord Baelish, Master of Coin, Lord of Harrenhal. So many titles, so much power." She took a step closer. "Built on lies. All power is built on lies." He descended the rest of the stairs slowly, his movements casual despite the obvious danger. "That's the first lesson of King's Landing. The truth is a luxury for fools and dead men. I am a dead woman." "Yes, you are." He studied her with open fascination. 3 weeks dead from what I hear, pulled from the trident and brought back by red magic. The Brotherhood's final miracle. How does it feel, Cat? To walk and talk while your body rots? To have your heart beat blood through veins that should be empty? How does it feel, she rasped, to know that everything you've done led to this? To know that your scheming killed the man you claimed to love? For the first time, something flickered in Littlefinger's eyes, something that might have been pain, though it passed too quickly to be certain. "I never claimed to love Ned Stark," he said quietly. "I loved you, Cat. Only you. Everything I did, you started a war." Stoneheart's hand went to her throat, to the rope scar. "You lied to me about the dagger, about Tyrion. You made me believe the Lannisters wanted my son dead. The Lannisters did want your son dead. That much was true. I simply redirected your suspicions to make sure you acted on that truth." He spread his hands. "And it worked, didn't it? You seized Tyrion." Tywin responded. "The war began. Everything unfolded exactly as you planned." She took another step. Her bodyguards tensed, but Littlefinger waved them back. "You wanted chaos. You wanted the great houses to tear each other apart, so you could climb higher, step over their corpses. I wanted you," he said, and his voice cracked slightly. "I wanted you to see that Ned Stark was not worthy of you, that his honor would get him killed, that you needed someone clever, someone who understood how the game was played." He laughed bitterly. "I even tried to warn him. I told him not to trust Cersei. I told him to seize power while he could, but he was too honorable, too noble, too God's damned stupid. So you had him killed." "No." Littlefinger shook his head. That was Joffrey's doing, the little monster. I advised against it. Ned Stark alive was useful. A hostage to keep the North in line. Dead, he was just a martyr. But Joffrey wanted to play king, and Cersei couldn't control him. He sighed. Such a waste. And Robb? Stoneheart's voice dropped to a whisper. My son. Was his death also a waste? Robb was doomed the moment he crowned himself. Littlefinger moved to the fire, warming his hands. He was brave, I'll grant him that. Brave and skilled. He won every battle. But he lost the war the day he married Jane Westerling. He broke his vow to the Freys, and in doing so, he gave Tywin Lannister the opening he needed. You knew. It was not a question. You knew what Walder Frey would do. I suspected. He turned to face her. When Tywin sent ravens to the twins, when the Westerlings suddenly became very cooperative, when the Red Wedding was announced, yes, Cat, I suspected. I knew something was coming. But I didn't know the details. I wasn't in the Riverlands when it happened. You could have warned us? To what end? He spread his hands. You would have fled, yes. Robb would have escaped. But then what? He still broke his oath. The Freys would still be his enemies. The North would still be isolated, surrounded by foes. He was dead already, Cat. The Red Wedding just hastened the inevitable. The door burst open. Thoros and Harwin rushed in, swords drawn, followed by a dozen more brothers. They surrounded Littlefinger's guards, blades at their throats. Should have done this 3 weeks ago, Thoros growled. This bastard's been pulling strings since before the war began. No, Stoneheart said. Not yet. I want to hear it. All of it. Littlefinger smiled. It was a sad smile, almost affectionate. You want to understand, don't you? You want to know why your perfect life fell apart, why your noble husband died, why your brave son was murdered, why everything you loved turned to ash. Tell me. He sighed and settled into a chair by the fire, as though they were old friends sharing wine instead of a dead woman and the man who destroyed her family. It started with Jon Arryn, he began. The old hand grew suspicious about Joffrey's parentage. He was right to be suspicious, of course. The boy was Jaime's, not Robert's. But Jon was cautious. He wanted proof before he acted. So he investigated, asked questions, started gathering evidence. And you killed him. Lysa killed him, Littlefinger corrected. My sweet, mad Lysa, who loved me more than life itself. I convinced her that Jon was planning to send her precious boy away, to foster him with Stannis Baratheon. She couldn't bear that thought, so she poisoned her husband with the tears of Lys, and everyone thought it was a sudden illness. Then you convinced her to blame the Lannisters. She sent the letter to you herself, told you the Lannisters had murdered Jon Arryn. It was easy. She believed it herself in her way. Lysa always believed what I needed her to believe. He stared into the fire. You received the letter. You became suspicious. And when Bran fell from that tower, your suspicions turned to certainty. The dagger, Stoneheart whispered. You lied about the dagger. I told you it was Tyrion's, a useful lie. You already suspected the Lannisters. I simply pointed you at the most vulnerable target, the imp, the one everyone already hated. He looked up at her. You seized him, brought him to the Eyrie, and Tywin Lannister, who loves his children in his own twisted way, sent his mad dog Gregor Clegane into the Riverlands, burned your father's lands, killed your father's people, forced Ned to respond. Ned could have made peace. Ned tried to make peace. He investigated Joffrey's parentage, just as Jon Arryn had. He found the truth, and like the honorable fool he was, he told Cersei, gave her a chance to flee, to take her bastard children and run. Littlefinger shook his head in disbelief. He actually thought she would go quietly, that she would sacrifice everything she had built, everything she had schemed for, just because Ned Stark asked her nicely. So she killed him. Joffrey killed him. Against all advice, against all reason. The boy wanted to prove he was strong, and in doing so, He started a war that's torn the Seven Kingdoms apart. Littlefinger leaned back in his chair. But I won't pretend to mourn Ned Stark. He took you from me, Cat. He married you when you should have been mine. He gave you children, gave you Winterfell, gave you everything I couldn't, and he was going to get you killed with his honor and his northern stubbornness. So you destroyed him. Stoneheart moved closer, her hands clenched into fists. You destroyed my family, my children, everything I loved. For what? For gold? For power? For you. He stood facing her. It was always for you, Cat. Every move, every scheme, every lie. I wanted to save you from him, from his honor, from his war. I wanted to give you the Vale, give you Harrenhal, give you everything you deserved. I deserved to watch my son die? No. His voice broke. No. That was never... I didn't want that, Cat. I swear to you. I would have saved Robb if I could. But he was too proud, too stubborn, too much like his father. He wouldn't bend, wouldn't compromise, wouldn't do what was necessary to survive. And what is necessary? She was very close now, close enough that he could see the gray flesh beneath her hood, the rope scar that would never heal. What is necessary to survive in your world? Whatever it takes, he said simply. Lie, cheat, steal, kill, marry women you don't love, murder men who trust you, sacrifice everything and everyone if it means you survive another day. He reached out as though to touch her face, but stopped himself. That's the game, Cat. That's the only game. And I've been playing it since I was a boy in the Fingers, dreaming of climbing higher than anyone thought possible. And did you? Stoneheart's hand shot out, grabbing his wrist. Her grip was like iron, cold and unyielding. Did you climb high enough? Are you satisfied with your throne of corpses? No, he whispered, because you're not with me. Because the woman I loved died in the Trident. And the thing that came back wears her face, but has none of her warmth, none of her mercy. He looked into her eyes. I destroyed everything you loved, Cat, and in doing so, I destroyed the only thing I ever loved. For a long moment they stood like that, the dead woman and the living man who had killed her world. The rain pounded on the roof. The fire crackled. Littlefinger's guards shifted nervously, but the Brotherhood kept their blades steady. You're right, Stoneheart said finally. The woman you loved is dead, gone, nothing left but vengeance. Then kill me, he said. If it will bring you peace, if it will ease your pain, kill me. I won't stop you, won't beg, won't run. He smiled sadly. Perhaps I deserve it. Perhaps I've earned a rope, same as the phrase. No. She released his wrist and stepped back. Not rope, not for you. Then what? He seemed genuinely curious. A blade? Poison? Will you drown me in the Trident? Let the river take me as it took you? Nothing. The word fell like a stone. I'll do nothing. Confusion flickered across his face. I don't understand. Death is too quick, too merciful. Stoneheart turned away from him. You want to climb? Keep climbing. Higher and higher. Until you realize you're alone. Until everyone you used, everyone you betrayed, is gone. Until all you have is your schemes and your gold and your empty throne. Cat, let him go, she told the Brotherhood. Let him ride. Back to his Vale. Back to his little lordship. Back to his games. She looked over her shoulder at him. But know this. Petter Baelish, every Frey who hangs because you put the rope around their necks. Every death in this war is your doing. You wanted chaos. You have it. I hope you choke on it. She walked to the door, and the Brotherhood parted before her. Cat, wait, Littlefinger called after her. What about your daughters? Sansa's in the Vale with me. She's safe. I can protect her. I can... Sansa. Stoneheart stopped, her hand on the door. Is she truly safe? Or is she another piece in your game? He didn't answer. Couldn't answer. I thought so. She pulled her hood up, hiding her face. Keep her safe. Pet her. Keep her alive. Because if you don't, if you use her, the way you used me, she paused. There's no place in this world where I won't find you. No castle, no army, nothing will keep you safe from a dead woman who has nothing left to lose. She stepped out into the rain, and the Brotherhood followed. Within minutes, they had mounted and ridden away, vanishing into the gray curtain of the storm. Littlefinger stood in the doorway, watching them go. His guards came up beside him, asking if they should give chase. He waved them away. Let her go, he said quietly. But my lord, she's a dead woman with a broken heart and an army of ghosts. He touched his wrist where she had gripped him, already feeling the bruises forming. There's nothing more dangerous in all the 7 kingdoms. He turned and walked back to the fire, pouring himself wine with shaking hands. He had faced down lords and kings, had survived the games of King's Landing, had climbed from nothing to heights undreamed of. But tonight, for the first time in many years, Petyr Baelish was afraid. Because Catelyn Stark, or the thing that had been Catelyn Stark, had shown him something worse than death. She had shown him mercy. And in that mercy she had given him the one thing he could never escape, himself. The Blackfish had not slept in 2 days. Sir Brynden Tully stood on the battlements of a ruined watchtower, 5 leagues south of Riverrun, watching the dawn break over his homeland. The Riverlands stretched before him, fields churned to mud by marching armies, villages burned to ash, roads empty of travelers. Everything his brother Hoster had built, everything the Tullys had protected for centuries, reduced to desolation. And Riverrun itself, the great castle of his house, now flew the flayed man of Bolton and the twin towers of Frey. He spat over the battlement. "Riders coming," said Sir Dennis Mallister, his second in command. The old knight pointed toward the tree line. 3 of them, flying no banners. Bryndon's hand went to his sword, but he relaxed when he recognized the lead rider. That's Edmure's man, Lucas Blackwood's squire. He descended the tower stairs quickly, his joints protesting. He was too old for this. For sleeping on cold stone, for eating dried meat and stale bread, for fighting a war that could not be won. But the Blackfish had never known when to quit. The riders approached cautiously, hands visible, weapons sheathed. The young squire, barely 17, dismounted and knelt. "Sir Brynden, I bring word from Lord Edmure." "Still calling him Lord, are we?" Bryndon's voice was bitter. Even though he surrendered Riverrun to the Freys? Even though he bent the knee to the Lannisters? "He did what he had to do," the boy said quietly. "They had his wife. They threatened to hang her. And the child she carries." Bryndon's anger deflated slightly. Rosalind Frey, one of the few Freys worth a damn, by all accounts. She had married Edmure at the Red Wedding, before the slaughter began. She had wept when the music started, they said. Wept because she knew what was coming. "What does my nephew want?" The boy handed him a letter, sealed with Edmure's personal seal, not the Tully trout, but the simple marking of a lord, without lands or title. Brynden broke it open and read, "Uncle, they keep me in a tower room, comfortable enough but guarded day and night. Rosalind is with me. The child will come in 2 months' time. They say it will be a boy. Lord Walder promises to legitimize him, to make him heir to Riverrun when I am dead. A Frey ruling Riverrun. Our father would weep. I write to warn you. There are rumors in the Twins, whispers about a hooded woman who hunts Freys. They say she is our sister, brought back from death. They say she hangs men without trial, without mercy. They say she is coming for the Twins itself. Uncle, if there is any truth to these rumors, if Cat truly walks again, you must stop her. Whatever she has become, whatever drives her, this path leads only to more death. The war is over. The North is broken. Robb is dead. We must survive. We must protect what remains of our house. Please, Uncle, find her. Stop her, before she destroys us all. Edmure Brynden read the letter twice, then folded it carefully and tucked it into his belt. He wants me to stop her, he said softly. To stop Cat. Is it true, then? Sir Dennis moved closer. Is Lady Catelyn truly alive? Not alive. Brynden stared out at the Riverlands. But not dead either. I've heard the stories, same as everyone. The Brotherhood Without Banners, led by a hooded woman who speaks with a voice like grinding stones, who asks no questions and hears no pleas, who hangs phrase wherever she finds them. He paused. They say, if you look under her hood, you see a rope scar across her throat, the wound that killed her. Gods preserve us, Dennis whispered. The gods haven't preserved anything in this land for 3 years. Brynden turned to the squire. Tell me where she is. Tell me where I can find my niece. They found the Brotherhood 2 days later, camped in a hollow near the Trident. Brynden approached alone, his hands visible, his sword sheathed. He had led men into battle for 40 years. He knew when to fight and when to talk. The outlaws surrounded him immediately. He recognized some of them. Lem Lemoncloak, who had fought for his brother. Harwin, who had served at Winterfell. Thoros of Myr, the drunken red priest who had somehow become a miracle worker. Sir Brynden, Thoros said, and there was genuine regret in his voice. I'm sorry, you can't be here. I'm here to see my niece. She's not your niece anymore. Thoros looked older than Brynden remembered, his face lined with sleepless nights and hard choices. She's something else now, something... I don't care what she is. Brynden's voice was hard. She's my brother Hoster's daughter. She's blood, and I will see her. A figure emerged from the trees. She wore a hooded cloak that hid her face, and moved with a strange mechanical grace. When she spoke, her voice was like stones dragged across a tomb. Uncle! Brynden had faced charging knights and storming castles without flinching, but hearing that voice, Cat's voice, but wrong, so terribly wrong, made him take an involuntary step backward. Cat? His voice cracked. Is it really you? She pulled back her hood. The Blackfish had seen terrible things in his long life. He had seen men burned alive at Summerhall. He had seen the madness in Aerys Targaryen's eyes. He had seen the bodies after the sack of King's Landing, but nothing had prepared him for this. The rope scar dominated her throat, a livid purple wound that gaped obscenely. Her face was gray, the flesh sunken, marked by the furrows of her own fingernails. Her eyes were blue, Cat's eyes, unmistakably, but cold and empty as winter ice. Not Cat, she rasped. Not anymore. That woman died at the Twins, with her son. Gods, Brynden whispered. What have they done to you? They killed me. She moved closer, and he forced himself not to retreat. They murdered my boy, cut his throat, put a wolf's head on his body. Then they killed me, while I begged for his life. I know. Brynden's hands clenched into fists. I know what they did. I wasn't there. I was leading the rear guard. By the time I learned what had happened, his voice broke. Cat, I'm sorry. I should have protected him. Should have seen the betrayal coming. No one saw. Her hand went to her throat. Even I didn't see. I trusted, guessed right. Trusted the sacred laws. Trusted that some things were still sacred. She laughed that terrible, bubbling laugh. I was wrong. What are you doing? He gestured at the camp, at the Brotherhood. Edmure writes that you're hunting Freys, hanging them without trial. Cat, this isn't justice. This is vengeance. She said it without shame. Yes, that's what I am now. Vengeance for the Red Wedding. Vengeance for my son, for my husband, for my daughters. Your daughters. Brynden seized on this. Sansa is alive, Cat. She's in the Vale. And Arya, there are rumors she may be alive too. Don't you want to find them? Don't you want to... I'm dead. She cut him off. I can't be their mother. Can't hold them. Can't Comfort them. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I can only hang the ones who destroyed them. And Edmure? Brynden asked. Your brother? He's a prisoner in the Twins. The Freys have him. If you try to take the castle, they'll kill him. Him and his wife, and the child she carries. For the first time, something flickered in her eyes. Something that might have been conflict. Edmure, she said softly. Little brother. Always trying to please father. Always failing. He's trying to protect what's left of our family. Brynden moved closer. He surrendered Riverrun to save his wife and child. He's being held hostage to keep the Riverlands quiet. If you attack the Twins, the Freys will execute him. They'll say it was justice for your crimes. He betrayed the young wolf. He was captured, forced to march on Robb's army with a noose around his neck. What choice did he have? Brynden's voice rose. We've all been forced to make terrible choices, Cat. Edmure, me, even you. But family is what remains. It's all we have left. Stoneheart stood silent for a long moment. The camp around them had gone quiet, every man listening. Thoros watched with the intensity of a man who had prayed too many prayers and received too many answers. I loved Edmure, she said finally. When we were children, when father wasn't disappointed in him, when he smiled and laughed and dreamed of being a great knight, her hand clenched. But that was another life, before the Red Wedding, before I died. You're not dead, Brynden insisted. You're changed, yes, wounded, but you're still Cat, still my niece, still capable of mercy. Mercy, she turned the word over. I showed mercy at the Twins. I begged for Robb's life. I offered them anything, everything. I held a knife to Jingle Bell's throat, and I begged. Her voice hardened. They laughed. They killed my son, and they laughed. That's what mercy earns you. Jingle Bell was innocent, a simple-minded boy who never hurt anyone. You killed him anyway. Yes, no regret in her voice, no shame. I killed him, cut his throat, because I promised I would. Because the Freys had to learn that oaths mean something. And what did it accomplish? Brynden spread his hands. Jingle Bell is dead. Robb is dead. You're dead. And the Freys rule Riverrun. They won, Cat. They won everything. Not yet. She pulled her hood back up, hiding her ruined face. They still breathe. They still sleep in warm beds. They still think they're safe. She looked at him with those cold blue eyes. But I'm coming. For them. For all of them. And when I'm done, House Frey will be ash. Even if it costs Edmure's life? The question hung in the air. Even then, she said, but her voice wavered slightly. He made his choice, surrendered, bent the knee. He chose survival. He chose his child. Brynden stepped forward, grabbing her arms. The Brotherhood tensed, hands on weapons, but he ignored them. His unborn child, Cat, your nephew or niece, Tully blood, Stark blood, through you. Would you condemn an innocent child for the father's choices? Her hands came up, gripping his wrists. The strength in those ruined fingers was terrible, inhuman. She could have broken his bones if she wanted. Instead, she just held him. The child, she whispered. Is it truly Edmure's? Rosalind swears it. The Meisters confirm it. A boy, they think, due in 2 months. A boy. Something ancient and maternal stirred in her voice. Edmure's son, my brother's heir. Your nephew, Brynden pressed. Family, blood, the future of House Tully. Would you kill him before he's even born? She released his wrists and turned away. For a long moment she stood with her back to him, shoulders hunched, head bowed. The Brotherhood watched in silence, Thoros with his hands clasped as though in prayer. When she spoke again, her voice was so quiet he almost missed it. I'll spare The child. Brynden let out a breath he hadn't known he was holding. And Edmure? If he stays in the twins, if he doesn't fight, when I come, she paused, I'll spare him too. Cat. But I won't spare the others. She turned back to face him. The ones who planned it. The ones who executed it. The ones who laughed. Her voice hardened. They all hang. Every last one. It will start another war, Brynden warned. The Lannisters will let them come. She spread her arms. What can they do? To someone already dead? What can they take? From someone who has lost everything? He had no answer for that. What could you threaten a corpse with? What could you offer a ghost? Catelyn Stark had been bound by duty, by honor, by love for her family. But Stoneheart was bound by nothing except the rope around her throat and the fury in her heart. Then I can't stop you, Brynden said quietly. I can only ask, when you storm the twins, when you hang the phrase, send word first. Give me time to get Edmure out. You would help me? I would save my nephew. He met her eyes. But if saving him means helping you, yes, I'll help. The phrase broke guest right. They murdered their king. They deserve whatever comes for them. She studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. When the time comes, I'll send word. 3 days before. Enough time to get him out. 3 days, Brynden agreed. He looked at his niece, at what remained of her, and felt grief threaten to overwhelm him. Cat, I'm sorry. For everything. For not protecting Robb. For not stopping the Red Wedding. Don't, she raised a hand. I don't want apologies. Don't want regrets. Don't want anything but vengeance. Then I pray you find it, he said. And I pray, when it's done, you finally find peace. There is no peace, she whispered. Not for the dead. Only silence. She turned and walked back into the trees. The Brotherhood followed, melting into the shadows like ghosts. Within moments they were gone, as though they had never been. Brynden stood alone in the hollow, staring at the place where his niece had disappeared. Ser Dennis approached quietly. What now, sir? Now? Brendan's laugh was bitter. Now we wait. We watch. And when the dead woman comes for the twins, we make sure Edmure survives it. He looked up at the sky, where ravens circled. The gods help us all. But the gods, as always, remained silent. The girl was dying. Pod watched her chest rise and fall with shallow, labored breaths, her face pale as milk in the firelight. She couldn't have been more than 12, a peasant girl from some burned village, caught between armies and left to starve by the roadside. They had found her 3 days ago, half dead from fever and hunger. Brienne had insisted on carrying her. She needs rest, Pod said quietly, wringing out a cloth to place on the girl's forehead. She needs a maester, and a warm bed, and she needs food, Brienne interrupted, her voice gruff, and clean water, and time. We can give her those things. Pod looked at his lady, though she would never call herself that. Brienne of Tarth sat on the other side of the fire, her scarred face illuminated by the flames. She wore mail beneath her torn surcoat, and Oathkeeper hung at her side, the Valyrian steel blade that Jaime Lannister had given her, the blade he had reforged from Ned Stark's ice, the blade that was both a gift and a burden. We've been searching for weeks, Pod ventured. No sign of Sansa Stark anywhere. Maybe we should... We don't stop. Brienne's jaw set stubbornly. I swore an oath to Lady Catelyn. I swore to find her daughters and keep them safe. I won't break that oath. But Lady Catelyn is dead, I know. Brienne's hand went to Oathkeeper's hilt. But oaths don't die with the one who received them. They live on. They have to, or else what's the point? What's the point of honor, of duty, of being a knight? If our word dies the moment it becomes inconvenient? Pod had no answer for that. He was just a squire. A poor squire at that, dismissed from service by the Lannisters. Following a woman the world mocked as Brienne the Beauty, in cruel jest. But in the weeks they had traveled together, he had learned something. Brienne of Tarth was the truest knight he had ever known, even if she would never be called one. The sound of movement in the darkness made them both tense. Brienne's hand tightened on her sword. Pod reached for his own blade, a simple thing, nothing like Oathkeeper, but sharp enough. "Peace," a voice called from the shadows. "We mean no harm." 3 figures emerged into the firelight, men wearing rough clothes, carrying weapons that had seen hard use. One wore a yellow cloak that looked almost comical in the firelight. "Lem Lemoncloak," Brienne said, recognizing him. "I know you. You rode with Beric Dondarrion." "Still do," Lem said, in a manner of speaking, though Lord Beric's been dead these past months. He studied Brienne carefully. "You're the woman they call Brienne the Beauty, the one who travels with a Lannister sword." Brienne stood slowly, her hand never leaving Oathkeeper's hilt. "This blade was a gift, given to me by Jaime Lannister, yes, but reforged from ice, Eddard Stark's greatsword. I carry it in service to Lady Catelyn's memory, to find her daughters." "Is that so?" Lem's eyes narrowed. "Then you'll want to come with us. There's someone who'll be very interested in your oath." "Who?" "You'll see soon enough. Come, it's not far." Pod helped the sick girl onto a litter they had fashioned from branches and rope. Brienne carried one end, Pod the other, following the Brotherhood through the dark woods. After an hour's walk, they came to a hollow where campfires burned, and men moved in the shadows. And in the center, sitting on a fallen log like a queen on a throne, was the hooded woman. Brienne stopped so suddenly that Pod nearly dropped his end of the litter. "Lady Catelyn?" Brienne's voice was barely a whisper. "Is it truly you?" The figure stood and pulled back her hood. Pod gasped. He had heard the stories. Everyone had heard them. But seeing her was something else entirely. The rope scar across her throat was horrifying. The claw marks on her cheeks, like some animal had tried to dig through to her skull. Her eyes were cold and dead, blue as winter ice. "Not Lady Catelyn," came that terrible rasping voice. "Not anymore." Brienne went to one knee immediately, her head bowed. "My lady, I don't understand. They said you were dead. At the Red Wedding. They said I was dead." Stoneheart moved closer, circling Brienne like a wolf circling prey. 3 days. In the river. Then brought back. By red magic. By sacrifice. She stopped in front of Brienne. "I am what remains, when everything else is cut away. I'm so sorry, my lady." Brienne's voice shook. "I'm so sorry for what they did to you. To King Robb. To..." "Sorry." Stoneheart laughed that bubbling laugh. "Everyone is sorry, but sorry doesn't bring back the dead, doesn't undo the Red Wedding, doesn't restore my son. No, my lady, but I've been searching for your daughters, Sansa and Arya. I swore an oath to you. When you freed Jaime Lannister, you made me swear to find them and keep them safe. I've been trying. I've been looking everywhere, but the sword." Stoneheart's voice cut through Brienne's explanation. "Where did you get that sword?" Brienne's hand instinctively went to Oathkeeper's hilt. "Jaime Lannister gave it to me. He had it reforged from your husband's blade, from ice. He said he wanted it used to keep the oath we both made to you, to protect your daughters." Jaime Lannister. The name dripped with venom. The Kingslayer. The man who murdered my husband's king. The man who crippled my son. She leaned closer. "That Jaime Lannister gave you a sword?" "Yes, my lady. But he's changed. He's..." "Changed?" Stoneheart's voice rose. "Changed? He pushed my Bran from a tower. Tried to murder a child, a 7-year-old boy." Her hands clenched into fists. "And you think he's changed?" "He saved me," Brienne said quietly. "From Hoat's men. From the bear pit at Harrenhal. He could have left me to die. Instead, he came back. Risked his life for mine." "So you love him?" It was not a question. Brienne's face flushed red. "No, my lady, I don't..." Don't lie. Stoneheart knelt down, bringing her ruined face level with Brienne's. I can see it in your eyes, in the way you speak his name. You love the Kingslayer, the man who destroyed my family. Whatever I feel doesn't matter, Brienne said desperately. My oath is to you, to find your daughters. I've been searching for months. I haven't given up. I won't give up. I swear it. Swear. Stoneheart stood. Everyone swears. Robb swore. To marry a Frey. Walder Frey swore. Guessed right. Everyone swears. And everyone lies. She gestured to the Brotherhood. Men appeared from the shadows surrounding Brienne and Pod. Rough hands seized them, pulled them to their feet. Someone grabbed Oathkeeper from Brienne's belt despite her struggles. My lady, please! Brienne's voice rose in desperation. I haven't broken my oath. I'm still searching. I just need more time. Time. Stoneheart took Oathkeeper from one of the brothers, studying the blade in the firelight. The Valyrian steel rippled red and black like waves of blood. This sword was made from my husband's blade. Ice. The sword that beheaded traitors, executed deserters. She looked at Brienne. What would Ned Stark do with an oathbreaker? I'm not an oathbreaker. Brienne struggled against the men holding her. I've done everything I could. I've searched every town, every village. I've asked questions, followed rumors. It's not my fault I haven't found them yet. Months, Stoneheart rasped. You've had months. And what have you accomplished? Nothing. No Sansa. No Arya. Just excuses. She stepped closer. Unless you never intended to keep your oath. Unless you were lying from the start. That's not true. Then why? Stoneheart's voice rose. Why? Do you carry a Lannister sword? Why do you wear Lannister gold? She grabbed the chain around Brienne's neck, yanking it hard enough to make her gasp. A small golden locket dangled from it. Why do you carry tokens from the man who killed my king? Jaime didn't kill Aerys for glory, Brienne said, her voice strained. He killed him to save King's Landing, to save 500,000 people from wildfire. He broke his oath to save lives. That's not murder. That's treason. Stoneheart released the chain. He swore to protect his king. He killed him instead. That's the definition of oath-breaking. And what about you? Brienne's voice hardened. You swore to love Lord Eddard, to honor him. But you released Jaime Lannister without his permission. You traded his prize hostage for the promise of your daughters. Who's the oath-breaker, my lady? The camp went deathly silent. Men backed away from Brienne as though she had struck Stoneheart physically. Thoros closed his eyes, murmuring what might have been a prayer. Stoneheart stood very still. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, which somehow made it more terrifying. You dare! Each word fell like a stone. You dare judge me? You who carries Lannister steel? You who defends the man who destroyed my family? I judge no one, my lady. Brienne met Stoneheart's eyes without flinching. I only speak the truth. We've all broken oaths. We've all made choices we regret. But I haven't given up on mine. I'm still searching. I'm still trying. And I'll keep trying until I find Sansa and Arya, or until I die in the attempt. Then die, Stoneheart gestured to the brothers. Hang her. And the boy, too. Lannister servants. Both of them. No, Pod's voice cracked. Please, we haven't done anything wrong. We're trying to help. We found that girl. She was dying and we saved her. We've been helping people everywhere we go. Silence. Stoneheart turned her cold gaze on him. The Lannisters burned this land, murdered its people, raped its women. She looked at the sick girl on the litter, her expression unreadable. And now you expect gratitude for saving one child while wearing Lannister gold? We're not Lannisters, Brienne said. I serve no house but the oath I swore to you. This blade, she gestured to Oathkeeper, still in Stoneheart's hands, is meant to protect your daughters, not to serve the Lannisters, not to serve anyone but your family. My family. Stoneheart's voice broke slightly. My family is dead. Robb, murdered. Ned, beheaded. Bran and Rickon, killed. Sansa, lost. Arya, gone. Her hand tightened on Oathkeeper's hilt. I have no family, only vengeance. Then let me help you, Brienne pleaded. Let me find your daughters. Let me bring them home. It's not too late. They could still be alive, both of them. But you have to give me time. Time is a luxury, Stoneheart said, that I don't have. The dead don't have time, only purpose. She raised Oathkeeper, and the Valyrian steel caught the firelight, gleaming red as blood. The Brotherhood moved forward with rope, good rope, strong rope, the kind that wouldn't break under a person's weight. Brienne didn't struggle as they bound her hands. She stood tall, her jaw set, her eyes dry. If you do this, my lady, you're no better than the Freys. You're breaking guest right, just like they did. You're murdering innocent people for the crimes of others. Innocent? Stoneheart laughed. No one is innocent. Everyone serves someone. Everyone takes someone's coin. Everyone makes choices. She stepped closer to Brienne. You chose to serve Jaime Lannister. You chose to carry his sword. You chose to defend him. I chose to honor an oath, Brienne said. The oath I swore to you. That's all I've ever tried to do. For a long moment, Stoneheart stared at her. Something moved behind those cold blue eyes. Some ghost of the woman who had been Catelyn Stark. The woman who had valued honor, who had loved her daughters, who had understood duty and sacrifice. But it passed quickly, drowned beneath the weight of rage and grief. Rope or sword, Stoneheart said. Those are your choices. Die by hanging, or take this blade. She held out Oathkeeper, and use it to kill Jaime Lannister. Bring me his head. Prove your oath. Prove you serve. Me, not him. Brienne's face went pale. My lady, I can't. Then hang. Stoneheart's voice was flat. You and the boy. Tonight. Wait! Brienne's composure cracked. Please, my lady, Pod has done nothing wrong. He's just a boy. A squire. He's innocent of everything except loyalty. If you want blood, take mine. But let him go. Pod shook his head frantically. I won't leave you, my lady. I won't. How touching. Stoneheart looked at them both. Loyalty. Sacrifice. The very things the Freys destroyed. She turned away. You have until dawn to decide. Sword or noose. She walked into the darkness, and the Brotherhood followed, leaving Brienne and Pod bound and guarded by armed men. The sick girl still lay on her litter, unconscious, unaware of the drama unfolding around her. Brienne slumped against the tree they had tied her to. Tears ran down her scarred face. I'm sorry, Pod, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I should have left you somewhere safe. Should have. You gave me purpose, Pod said quietly. Before you, I was just paying the piss. A clumsy squire who couldn't even hold a lance right. You treated me like I mattered. Like I was worth something. He smiled through his own tears. I'd rather die with you than live knowing I abandoned you. You're a good boy, Pod. A true knight, even if you never wear the white cloak. They sat in silence for a time, watching the fire burn low. The guards watched them but said nothing. Some looked uncomfortable. Others looked sympathetic. None looked willing to defy the hooded woman's orders. Hours passed. The moon rose, casting silver light through the trees. Dawn was perhaps 3 hours away. Brienne closed her eyes, thinking of Jaime, of his smile when he gave her Oathkeeper, of the way he had looked at her in the bathhouse at Harrenhal, vulnerable and honest in a way he had never been with anyone else, of the promise she had made to him To find Catelyn Stark's daughters and keep them safe, she had failed. Failed Catelyn, failed Jaime, failed the girls who were somewhere out in the world, alone and afraid, failed Pod, who would die because of her choices. Sword or noose, she whispered. But in her heart, she already knew there was only one choice she could make. One choice that honored the oath she had sworn, even if it cost her everything. When dawn came, when Stoneheart returned to hear her answer, Brienne would have to choose, and whatever she chose would damn her. The fire crackled. The guards shifted. Pod dozed fitfully against his bonds. And in the darkness, Lady Stoneheart sat alone, one hand on her throat, the other on Oathkeeper's hilt. She did not sleep. She never slept. She only remembered. Remembered Ned's smile on their wedding day. Remembered Robb's first steps. Remembered Sansa's songs, and Arya's laughter, and Bran's climbing, and Rickon's innocent questions. Remembered being loved, being warm, being alive. Remembered being Catelyn Stark. But those memories were distant now, faded and gray, like dreams from another lifetime. All that remained was the rope scar and the rage and the endless gnawing hunger for vengeance. All that remained was Stoneheart. And in the morning, she would have her answer. Sword or noose, blood or rope, loyalty or life. The choice would be Brienne's. But the consequences would echo far beyond this hollow, far beyond this night, because somewhere in the Vale, Sansa Stark still lived, still hoped, still dreamed of being rescued by a true knight. And somewhere in the world, Arya Stark survived, still fought, still remembered her family. They would never know how close they came to being found, how close Brienne of Tarth came to keeping her oath, how close, and yet how impossibly far. The fire burned down to embers, the night deepened, and Lady Stoneheart waited for dawn, and for justice, and for the vengeance that would never be enough, never enough to fill the hole where her heart had been, never enough to bring back what she had lost, never enough